In this episode, I'm joined by growth marketer and web design specialist Steve Linney, where we discuss how website psychology can influence visitor behaviour, along with tips and tools you can use to optimise your website's performance. Steve, great to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to kind of be on board, especially kind of early days in a new podcast. So, fun and exciting times ahead.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, look, Steve, for everyone in the audience's benefit, can you just start at the beginning, describe your career and your journey to becoming a freelancer?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I'm going to try and keep it as potted as possible, but I suppose my journey towards a freelancer is I've always wanted to kind of be my own boss, essentially, and when I have worked in-house, it's either gone really well because I've worked with a really good team, or it's been really bad because it's just not clicked as well. And I think part of that has been kind of wanting to do my own thing and kind of being a bit of a kind of going against the grain about how someone thinks I might do. Sometimes I've got kind of strong opinions from that side. So working for myself began straight after university when I was kind of running club nights. And that was kind of my introduction to marketing from that side of things. Even though I wouldn't have called myself a marketer, I was definitely a club promoter and a DJ. But it's exactly what I was doing then is exactly what I'm doing now with my kind of freelance clients who have got nothing to do with club promotion. It's finding the benefits to your customer and making it as clear as possible to them so they can come and enjoy your night or enjoy your website and your product. So that's kind of the start of it. I went in-house and worked for a long time down here in Brighton with a company called Learning People, which was a great time to kind of get to know the city as well, but also kind of really get to work with a nice big team and a lovely group of people and really kind of hone my kind of marketing skills, which were a bit kind of, I suppose maybe rough and ready. I'm not a trained marketer. I kind of did film and television at university, but ended up doing DJing more than I did the film and television. So I think it was good to kind of really kind of ground your skills in kind of a demanding team that kind of wanted you to get different places. And then from leaving there, I kind of moved into doing kind of freelance stuff on myself, and that's been going nicely for the last few years. And I've got a nice varied group of clients who've been with me for a fair bit of time that kind of range from kind of SaaS startups through to kind of well established kind of HR platforms. And I also work with a few kind of local independent people as well. And I like to kind of work on the alternative side. So I've worked with people who work with transpersonal psychology as well, because they kind of more alternative modalities is something that's really kind of a kind of passion that I have.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I saw on your LinkedIn profile one of the roles you mentioned at Learning Pool. I mean, effectively, you were head of marketing there, so you were running the marketing function for that organisation. And they're not a small organisation.
No. Well, to be honest, there was two companies with Learning. There was Learning People and Learning Pool. So Learning People are the ones that are kind of in Brighton, and that's when we started. There was like 6 of us in a cupboard, and now that's it's a massive multinational organisation, and I was kind of there for that first 5-6 year journey, just seeing it grow from being unknown entities through to a well-respected, award-winning business.
Yeah, so the reason I mention it is I think a lot of people would have the misconception that if they're hiring a marketing freelancer, they're probably going to be hiring them at quite a junior level. So they're hiring the people that are going to be doing the doing, and it's can you, I don't know, start sending out some social media posts, or can you design a flyer for us? And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that, with that process of outsourcing that sort of work. But I think the piece that's often ignored is it's possible to get people who've got a real deep experience at a strategic level in marketing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to be honest, that's kind of that's been a thing that's kind of been my benefit. Is having those kind of years of experience, but kind of years of experience in different areas as well. Especially when you kind of manage a team, and you've got you've got your own freelancers you're managing, or kind of agencies. You kind of have to know these different areas. You don't need to be a specialist in them, but you have to know them really well so you can manage them and then kind of make sure you get the best out of it. So then when you kind of on the other side, you kind of understand what that team needs from you as well. So you kind of understand it from both sides. It's a good way to kind of really get to know what your customer wants, rather than just kind of pitching up with ideas that just plucked out of nowhere. So,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think there's definitely a case as well with freelancers where you can get people that are kind of on the junior level, which is fantastic as well. But as you say, the more experience you've got, the kind of the I suppose more adaptive you can be to an organisation. And a lot of the companies I work with are kind of, start-up early doors, but they don't have a team. And I kind of come in and bring my kind of expertise to kind of just help them kind of push through the door, push through the barriers that they've got, and then eventually kind of bring their own team in, and I'll kind of move on from that side of things. So it's a nice kind of way to get a experienced team without spending a lot of money on recruitment.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you. And thinking back to your clients then, what challenges are they typically facing when they approach you, and when they pick up the phone to you? What is it they're trying to solve for?
It's the same as what everyone else is, it's kind of growth and just kind of revenue as well, but the difficult thing they've got is they don't have a base of customers, or if they do, it's very small. They don't really know what the messaging is, or kind of what their kind of ideal customer profile looks like. So it's just kind of working through their assumptions and kind of get something really grounded in place that we can work on. A lot of the time they kind of have a website that it's just, it's a page, it's a website, it's not particularly good. It could be on Squarespace or Wix was one of the ones. So it's kind of bringing them into something that's a bit more professional and styled nicely, but also kind of optimized so it kind of converts as well. But and just helping them kind of really kind of own their brand in the digital space. Some people might be doing well offline, but online is a different kind of beast.
Okay. And so let's say new prospective customer picks up the phone to you. They decide, actually, Steve's the person that we want to work with. What's the process that you would take them through to make sure, particularly with the website, that they end up with a website that's going to work for them?
Yeah, well, step one is an audit. You've got to kind of look at where they are at the moment and then just really break it apart, to a certain extent, and then look at the areas that kind of is a low-hanging fruit. What's going to be the easy wins for them? What's going to be the best of their budget? Because a lot of the time with especially the startups or smaller organisations, the budget is thin, so you've got to make sure it goes in the right places. So there's no point throwing everything at it at once, even if it might need it. Sometimes you might need to space it out over a period of months, even a year or longer. So it's just working out what their goals are in the short term, medium term and long term, and then how you can best benefit them to get to those goals.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's kind of the kernel of any strategy, isn't it? It's an assessment of what their current resources are and where they need to be, and then filling in the gaps between them. Yeah,
exactly. Just it's about trying to be flexible, but you've got your skill sets, and you don't want to go too far outside those as well. You don't want to promise the earth and all that side of things as well, because as a freelancer, I think, especially if you're kind of early days as a freelancer, it's like, oh yeah, that's a job, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Even though you
say yes
don't
to
really
everything.
have the skills to do it as best you could do. So it's best to just kind of, stick to what you know and what you know how to work, and then do the best for the client is what you can do.
Yeah. Steve, when we were speaking beforehand, and one of the things that you're quite passionate about, and it comes up in your LinkedIn posts quite a lot as well, is around applying principles of psychology to the marketing, the design of websites or other collateral that you might create for a client. Do you want to just start off talking about how you might apply that and the benefits of doing so?
Yeah. So on the psychology aspect is something that's, it's been an interest of mine for a long time. Is, how does the mind work? What makes us tick and all that sort of thing. And, when it comes to the website, the psychology side of it is more thinking about how you can create something that is pleasing to a user. And that could be from the basics of how well it looks, but also, what's the story it's telling? Are you really kind of getting to what the crux of what the customer really wants to talk about, or what problem they've got and how you can solve them from that side of things. So I suppose psychology is kind of really a capsule term for user experience, customer experience, and just making sure that you're delivering as good a content as what you can do. And content, that's everything from the colour of your logo through to the videos that you're producing as well. It's just about making sure you concentrate, again, it's backing up benefits to the customer, but also, there's quite it's quite easy for people to do, I used to call it, it's like that vocal warm-up practice, the me side of things. I kind of use that as a, say to people, you're meing your website, because all you're doing, you're talking about me, oh, I provide this service does that, this widget will do this, but you're not flipping it on its head to work out why people need it in the first place. So think about what the benefits of that widget is to the individual rather than just what the widget can do.
I think there's, by the way, I totally agree with everything you've just said, but I think there's sort of a nice balance that needs to be struck sometimes, because I've certainly had conversations with people where they've taken that advice to heart, and every time they're talking about anything to do with a business, it's about it shoehorning in a benefit to the audience, and it doesn't feel natural. And I think it's also robbing the viewer of making that connection themselves, or treating them like a child, when of course they know that the reason that they're buying this particular software is because it's going to make them more efficient or save them time or whatever it is. You don't need to tell them every single time that you talk about your software that that's the benefit to them. But I think you're absolutely right. There is a benefit of talking about the benefits to your prospective audience when it's appropriate to do so. And just even if you're not explicitly talking about the benefits, being conscious of the things that actually make them tick and the things that they want to achieve, so that you can highlight that in certain ways. Your point about sorry, you carry on.
Just because what you're saying, 100% on there as well. The thing, I think what you need to do is balance. It's like everything in life. It's the yin and the yang side of things. You can be very kind of benefit focused on the homepage and landing pages, but people want to get to nitty gritty as well. So but you don't need to give them the detail straight off. You kind of feed them through the website as well, so they get as much of that information as what they want to. Well, keeping on with the benefits
in the appropriate order. That's right. You're sort of telling the story. Just want to go back to the point you raised about the colour schemes as well, because funnily enough, I'm working with a client at the moment, and they've got a really distinctive and bold brand, and it was absolutely appropriate for them at the time when they came up with that, because they were a scrappy startup and they were trying to appeal to other scrappy startups, and it kind of felt punky, and it worked for them. More and more they're trying to pitch to enterprise sized clients, and often, very frequently in fact, the feedback they get from opportunities where they've been discounted is, we just can't take you seriously. they're losing that element of trust, and I know the founders of that business are getting very frustrated. It's obviously a solvable problem. We can change the branding, but their frustration is, why on earth would a business be making a decision about this based on the colour of the software that they're going to be using? And it's a very logical question to be asking, but people don't operate on logic, do they?
No, and it's that kind of thing where if you think about just colours as in its own, they kind of ignite a little stimulus inside your head every time you see something. If you see yellow and red kind of packed in together, it's going to be a discount website. Whereas it's something like, Apple's a real good example. They just have pure white. Now it's gone to pure black. So it's very kind of simple toning. So I think maybe what your client needs to do is maybe simplify things without going to corporate beige or corporate blue, that kind of really dull side of it. They still need to kind of keep their edge to what they want to do, because it's, it's their brand. They can't just satisfy it from one customer as well, and sometimes it's good just if that customer doesn't like your website, they're not right for you. You can't win them all. Like your colours, exactly. You can't chase them all as well. That's kind of the dangerous thing. So, but again, it's that kind of yin and yang. I suppose if they want to move into the enterprise side of things, they do need to find a balance between what's going to appeal to more kind of dull corporate market as well. Because I think the thing with the enterprise, the bigger companies, you've got to realise is, you sell it to one person and they've probably got to sell it to 6 other people in the business. So it's not just that one person looking at the brand that you've got to need to satisfy. It's kind of a whole host of boring meetings you've probably got to get through.
And in result. In a B2B context, often the decision is the least controversial one. That's the outcome.
Yeah. Play it safe.
And at some point, you're, as the person who's led a particular project to buy some software, you're probably going to have to be presenting to the board, or your boss will be at some point. And if that board is quite conservative and maybe not up for, working with scrappy startup, punky type organisations, they'll be highly attuned and asking some very difficult questions of you as to why you made that decision.
Yeah, but what you could do is you could kind of help them through that process as well, though, with some supporting content. So here's a pack of info that will help appease your boring CEO.
Yes,
because I've being in house, I've definitely had to kind of push certain things sometimes that people haven't liked as well. But it's up to you to kind of win them over. But it always helps if the company that you're trying to buy with gives you enough ammunition to kind of show why you should be making that purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is an important point, isn't it? Because ultimately, with websites in particular, we're trying to build relationships and we're trying to come across as a trustworthy service or a provider of anything to somebody that we probably haven't met. Or the first time they land on the website, they probably haven't met you in person. And that is a challenge. How can you apply psychological principles to achieving that?
Actually, one thing to do is go back, read a book called The Monkey, I think it's The Chimp Paradox by Stephen Peters, and he really talks about the monkey brain and how that works. And you get an understanding of how much there's this little, primordial thing that reacts before you do inside your head. And one of the main things that we kind of react to is eyesight. So when you kind of, as we're talking right now, I'm looking at your eyes and you're looking at mine. And there was a book called Webs of Influence by Natalie Nahe that I've kind of mentioned a lot over the years, which was a seminal book for me, and it kind of was packed full of kind of examples of good psychology, bad psychology, how you can move things around and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and it was kind of light bulbs popping kind of all over the place for me. And one thing that stuck in mind was this little example of an A/B test, which I'm just going to share my screen now so you can see what that looks like. And this A/B test was an advert for some nappies. So on the left hand side you have a baby kind of looking outwards, and then we've got the kind of call to action here, and straight away you can see everybody's looking at the eyes and not really making it over to the call to action and not really making it over to the nappies. So how effective do you think that advert was? Probably not that much. Now the B test on it, and keep in mind this is the advert that was inside a magazine, it wasn't on a website, but it still works the same. So the baby's flipped to the side, people still start, they're using that left hand side thing, see the eyes, see the baby's looking over at the call to action, and then they make their way down through the copy and to the nappies. So this one is going to be far more effective than what the previous one was. So I could have adapted this at the time at learning people, and I think for a year I went a bit mad, maybe 2 years, and using this all the time. This is a heat map of, let's see, can I zoom in a bit here? There we go, of whatever old landing pages. So don't have a go at the design. The design's about 10 years old, and it's not as cool as it would do these days. But you can see people starting the left hand side on the red, they're going towards the eye, and then they're going straight to the call to action side of things. And then as we can see, they're on this other one, they're doing the exact same thing, eye down, call to action, and straight down as well. So this kind of made conversion rate kind of go through the roof, essentially. I think it was going from, I don't know, say it was 10% a page through, it went up to about 20%, 25%, maybe 30% some campaigns. Yeah. So, and the part of that as well was we were changing you can see here as well, actually, as going back to messaging and psychology. We were talking about 3 IT courses at this point, which was fine. But then we kind of swapped it to how much money someone could earn after doing some training, and that was far more emotive to someone than and it was more of a positive psychological push than just saying you can get this course for free. It was more money in your pocket is a much more of an emotive issue. So that's kind of one of the tools. I think I kind of talked about the iQuant thing, which is kind of looking at more the AI side. I hadn't seen a design beforehand. This is kind of a good example. So a new project of mine is Tribe, which is going to be a kind of a wellness portal. We're going to start off in Brighton, and it's kind of help people, especially men over 40. I know it's hard to believe that I'm over 40.
You're in good company.
No, I'm too close to 50, actually. It's scary. But so what we've got here is the kind of the staging site for the platform, and at the moment the design is very kind of, the current website is it's just a blog. Now we're going to move through to being a bit more kind of, this is what you're going to get from the directory side of things, and obviously after doing this for years you kind of get experience doing it, it kind of comes second nature to you, but it's always good to use a tool like this to kind of help reaffirm what you're talking about. And straight away you can see here it predicts that the people are looking at the H1, the H2, and then they're going towards the call to action side of things. So that to me that says job done. So it's a nice little tool that can just helps push in the right direction. Another tool that I've used a lot over the years is Visual Website Optimizer. And yeah, so I was kind of looking at this recently. So Visual Website Optimizer is great in that it will kind of That's probably not the best place. I'll stop sharing now, actually. So they are very good at doing your A/B tests, but also kind of generating your heat maps. And you don't need a ton of people for the heat maps to really work. Visual Website Optimizer, they did the same thing as iQuant, where they were actually quite reasonable. Then they went stupidly expensive. But I had another wee look at this again this morning, and there is a starter which is free, and that gives you kind of your A/B testing, your split A/B testing, and then all your heat map side of things as well. So this is something I'd recommend kind of using. And that big thing about marketing, where marketing's an art form. It is, but it's also at the core of it, it's a science, and you kind of need this data to kind of really kind of drive you through. Now, with a lot of the kind of the startups I work with, it's still kind of very gut instincts, because you don't get the through fall. You need a lot of people for A/B testing, but with tools where you can get your heat map, or even like the iQuant, where you can get an idea of what's going to look like beforehand, it helps to take the guesswork out of it. You're still going to have a level of guesswork, because even when you're doing your A/B testing strategy, you're still guessing what's going to be best next, but you've got this pile of data to help push in the right direction.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. For people who are listening to the podcast rather than watching the video, just to describe what was on the screen, there were examples of screenshots on the screen with different imagery. Sometimes it was the main character featuring on the homepage or the landing page, looking either directly at the camera or looking at the call to action. Sometimes it was just a different structure of the layout of the page. But the differences that made to where people's eyes were tracking on the screen was absolutely stark, and you would expect that, and you gave some examples of how that then translated into an improvement in the click-through rate or completion of the call to action. Something I did notice in those examples, I didn't recall seeing any sort of trust-building factors like client logos or testimonials in the line of sight around the call to action. I don't know if you've seen any benefits of including those in the past, or whether actually that can come later on.
Yeah, definitely. The social signals are fantastic. It's kind of it's the main driver essentially. But it's a difficult one as well, because these days we're kind of used to seeing a kind of lot of reviews, and we only ever show the really good ones as well. You don't always show the negative reviews on site. So it's really important to use something like Trustpilot, which is kind of like a third party. These things can be gamed. Nothing's perfect, but it makes it a little bit more trustworthy, or kind of Google reviews, that side of things, if it's someone that sits offside your site. But yeah, definitely as many kind of human testimonies you can get, the better, because as much as you talk about how great your brand is, it's good for other people to do it, and if you can get, especially on your social side of things, your customers creating a lot of the content, it makes things easier as well. So you can see people can see it being used in the real world. And there's one company I work with who they do electric bikes, so actually seeing people out and about and doing fantastic things with their bikes makes their life easier, because it just shows you how passionate people are with the bike and what they can do with it.
Yeah, great, thank you. And the examples that you shared on the screen, some of them were in terms of the work required to actually achieve the change in design of flipping the image of a baby from looking directly at the camera to looking at the call to action. That's probably not a massive amount of work to change. There are other projects where maybe the client that I was speaking about earlier, it might be that they consider a company-wide rebrand, and that can be months and months of work and costs thousands, hundreds of thousands, if you're a large organisation, millions of pounds to do. Before making that leap into doing something like that, are there ways that you can test these changes just to see, are we going to completely balls up the conversion rate on our website, or is it actually okay? Is it even going to improve how things perform?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely ways to test. There's definitely ways to get it wrong, and there's ways to try and get it right as well. And it's kind of that always be testing kind of philosophy. That you should always. Again, it's difficult to startups, more established companies that have got, the people come to site, it's easier to do. But if there's always something on the go that you're testing a little bit, Now, when it comes to the bigger changes, what you can do with those, you can maybe test out on the landing page or just the home page. You can just send 25% or 50% of traffic to that and get an understanding of what that's going to be. It might only be for, like a few days or a week, depending on how much traffic you have. And you'll see this as well. Google, for example, they do this all the time. Well, I was looking at Google Images the other day, and it was a totally different kind of layout to what it was previously, and then it's back to how it was. So they're obviously just testing for that day to see how the new layout went as well. So I think when it comes to sweeping changes, I think you kind of have to be pretty brave sometimes as well. Test out something that you think, oh, that's okay. This is an easy option. Give that a test. Test something out you think is a little bit out there, and you can test them all against each other and just see how you get there. So with a more established brand like that, I think you got to take a bit of time just to kind of work out who you want to be as a business. How do you want your brand to kind of look as well? Do you want to cave into the pressure of not being as kind of crazy, or do you want to maybe make that crazy slightly different? Testing, try and get some real people looking at it. You can it doesn't have to all be through kind of heat maps. Actually, bums on seats as well. Try and get as many opinions as what you can do. Another client, we're going through a colour change as well. We're making it quite different, and we're kind of trying to appeal more to kind of a female audience. Me as a kind of male designer, and the team are all kind of guys. We're not the best people to kind of say. So, we can get my wife, my sister, everyone kind of involved. Does this green look nice?
Yeah.
Does this appeal to you more than that kind of nice black yellow we've got for men beforehand? So, test, get as many people to see, get a plan in place, and then just iterate as you go along.
And your point about just get as many people to see, if you're working for a startup and you're not getting a ton of traffic to your website, do you think it's appropriate to, again, just going back to the idea of maybe investing in a brand, maybe it's the first brand that you're coming up with if you haven't launched yet, you'll have infinite numbers of options available to you as to what the style could be of a logo or the colour scheme that you're going to apply across your brand. Could you test that using display ads on platforms like LinkedIn or even the Google Display Network, and just try different versions? And how well does, say, things like click-through rate of an ad translate into the likely performance later on a website?
Yeah, so absolutely. You can test them through that way and just try and do variations. I think you've got to be careful not to be too disjointed. So if you've got an ad and it comes to the homepage and it looks totally different, or comes to the landing page, so you'd make sure that journey is still kind of fluid to a certain extent. Click-through rate is a good and a bad indicator. So it's a good indicator that your ad's working and they're coming through to site. However, it might be Facebook are serving up rubbish leads, so they click through, and when they've come to site, they've kind of jumped off straight away. So you kind of have to look at your engagement rate and how people are kind of acting on your site. So the main thing you kind of really need to think about is how many people are seeing the ad to begin with, how many people are then clicking through, so what's your click-through rate, and then how many people, once they get to the site, are they making a key action, whether that's sign up for a newsletter or sign up for more information, how are people actually creating that. So if you get 100,000 people to your website but only 10 people do something, you're not doing very well from that side of things, and your budget's not working very well. Or to use a more realistic example, say you get 1,000 people but you only get 1 or 2, it's kind of, that's a lot of people that shouldn't have really been coming to your website in the first place. So so to get back to the testing side of it, you definitely use that as a tool, but make sure the journey is not too just disjointed from it as well. So it does make it a bit tougher when it comes to the kind of more sweeping changes, but I think with a bit of time and a bit of planning, you can get that kind of 3-stage process. You've got your advert, landing page, and then whatever's next, you can kind of smooth that out.
And that way you are still significantly reducing the risk of a company-wide rebrand or investment like that. But still getting data that's a bit more accurate than just the click-through rate. I did see there was a whole sort of controversy not that long ago about WH Smith applying some new logos to their some of their stores across the UK. I don't know if you saw any of that, but it looked very much like the NHS branding. And I think they'd only applied it to about 5 stores at the time, and they were widely panned in the press for doing so. I did see someone just comment saying, actually, maybe they are being extraordinarily smart, because they might have run some focus groups where everyone goes, yeah, that looks really trustworthy, because I guess people trust the NHS, perhaps. Maybe there's some associations there. And then the next step is, well, we'll test it in a few stores rather than going down the BA route of spending hundreds of millions of pounds rebranding all of your planes or rebranding all of your stores and then realising, oh, actually, we need to back out of this.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably a bit of a smart move just to test out in a few places, and if it works,
and slam the brakes on if you need to.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, Steve, thank you so much for that. I've really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for all of the tools and tips and processes that you've recommended.
No problem.
You've mentioned a couple of books already. Something I am asking everyone for is a book you'd recommend every marketeer reads. I don't know if you want to stick with your original choices or if there's a third option.
Oh, do you know, I've got so many. I've got my list on my screen. So yeah, obviously that is a good one as well. And a lot of what that talks about is kind of, no pun here, is Influence by Robert Cialdini.
That's how I'd pronounce it as well. Yeah.
yeah, very tentatively. So that's kind of one of the original kind of psychology books out there. But anything by I always need to make sure I don't want to say the Family Guy, Seth Rogen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so All Marketers Are Liars is a good one, for your storytelling side of things. So anything he does tends to be something I really find quite interesting as well. And one that this is quite an old book as well now actually, but it's To Sell Is Human, and that was kind of a good thing for me as a marketer who came from a designer background. Didn't really think as a salesperson, but you realise that you are a salesperson. Everyone in the company, in the organisation, is a salesperson, just at different levels of it. So it just kind of helps you focus on where you are in that chain, I suppose.
Perfect, thank you. Plenty of options for me to fill up my bookcase behind me. And Steve, before I let you go, you mentioned at the top a project that you've been working on, Tribe. Do you want to just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so the Tribe, which is thetribe.com, is kind of a bit of a it's a good excuse for me to kind of try to expand my horizons in terms of exploring who I am as a man, as a human, someone who's 40, 40 plus, a dad, a husband, and kind of really kind of get to know different groups in the area and kind of wider, and do things like everyone's doing it now, but cold water dipping, kind of meditation, yoga, breathwork side of things. But the key crux of that is, we're kind of, society's in a bit of a crisis at the moment, and everybody is struggling, and we're trying to find ways that we can help people connect with facilitators who can make their life a little bit easier, and being myself and my kind of partner, we're both kind of 40 plus men, so we're kind of concentrating on 40 plus men because that's our kind of authentic voice. At some point we'd love to kind of get kind of women, kind of facilitators into there as well, but we need to kind of widen our kind of organisation so they can speak through that as well. So the idea is really to help facilitators who are kind of struggling to kind of get clients, meet the right people, and clients who are struggling to know what they should be doing, or they maybe have an inkling that they kind of want to get into kind of breath work, but they don't know how to. We can help those people kind of find each other.
Brilliant, thank you. On the breathwork piece, I've only had a couple of sessions of somebody leading a breathwork session that I've been involved in, and it was actually enormously beneficial. So it was just the sort of kick-off, a bit of an icebreaker for everybody on a remote call, and not that I went into it with the attitude of this isn't for me, I'm a red-blooded male, blah blah blah, but it was something I've never done before, and it's definitely not something I would normally choose to be doing to start my day. It only lasted for maybe even 5 to 10 minutes, but just having that kind of grounding activity where you are really focusing on something that's the way I describe it is it ended up being sort of quite meditative, and then finishing that process with, okay, so now you're in that state of mind, consciously think about what you would like to achieve for the day. How do you want to feel throughout the day? What do you want to achieve, and what do you want to feel at the end of the day? I ended up having one of the most productive days of my career doing that. It was absolutely transformational. That said, I haven't actively done it again, but that's on me because I have experienced the benefits of breath work and what it can achieve for me.
Yeah, it's really good to hear, to be honest. the whole thing about doing things like this is to kind of take you out of your kind of normal headspace and kind of create headspace, you know, because we're kind of so kind of, you know, tunnel vision. Sometimes we can't see the wider world among us, and you know, it's kind of, you can be too focused on something, you can't see how to actually fix a problem, but until you get out of that problem, you know. So definitely, stick with the breathwork stuff. But just one thing, where you reminded me of one of my clients that used to work with a company called, organisation called Aleph Trust, and they're an e-learning provider that do transpersonal psychology. So it's kind of understanding we're part of the bigger picture in the world. You know, it's not just us. We are nature. And every meeting we used to always start with a 2-minute meditation, and it was fantastic. It's, you know, it was just like a really nice way to kind of centre yourself and really think about, in the same ways you were doing to the breath work, is what you want to get from the meeting, what you want to get from the day, and how you can best serve yourself and what you're going to do with the Aleph Trust, which was a nice way to start.
Yeah, I bet it is. Bet the meetings were pretty productive after that as well. Less confrontation, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a good way to kind of take the ego out of things and just think about the higher self, the kind of more positive side of things.
Cool. Well, look, Steve, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that. At the start of the conversation, I didn't expect to be talking about breathwork, but I'm glad we did. So for everyone listening, how can they connect with you after the show?
Yeah, well, it's stevelinney.com is my website. I'm also on all social channels as Steve Linney. It tends to be me. I've managed to lock in everything to all the chagrin of all other Steve Linneys in the world, which there's probably isn't that many. But yeah, on anything you can find me as Steve Linney.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks, everyone.